किया था, किसी का तो N2 किया। हमने फिजिक्स दोनों पढ़े हैं। इस मैटर इन आवर सराउंडिंग्स प्योर का N2 चाहिए। फोर्सेस एंड लॉज ऑफ मोशन का इस मैटर इन आवर सराउंडिंग्स प्योर का N2 चाहिए। और इस मैटर और एटम्स एंड मॉलिक्यूल्स है ना थर्ड। नहीं और एक था पहले से नहीं किया। अरे हो गया ना, वो पिछली क्लास किया। अच्छा हां पहले एक बार कंफर्म करो। इस मैटर इन आवर सराउंडिंग्स प्योर योगा का और बस और लेवल 2 और केमिस्ट्री के थर्ड चैप्टर का जो क्लास में करवाया है एटम्स एंड मॉलिक्यूल्स क्या था जी थर्ड चैप्टर उसका आप इसको समझ आ अबे तुम लोग कितने ना वो मैं इतना फ्लक्चुएट कर रही थी मैं 2 दिन से छुट्टी पर थी 2 दिन ऐसे नहीं हुआ एमबीबीएस Why did you come? Because I was known for MEN and won the first prize. Oh, nice. In gold quest. Yeah. मैं flex मारूंगी यार. मैं जीती ठीक है ना एक ही पोजीशन था बेस्ट डेलीगेशन का मैं जीती. Oh my god. संजीती बैठी. तू आ गया हो जा. कोई खा नहीं जाएगा बैठ जा. ये तो एडमिन के साथ बैठ गया. नहीं ये बायोलॉजी की क्लास है. कितने दिन हो गए. ये तो बायो की क्लास में आ गया. एक मत कर. लास्ट टाइम मतलब ना ये तो खा जाती है वही तो ऐसा क्या करती है कौन सा चैप्टर चल रहा है मला माहित नाही ये व्हाट है रेसिपीज व्हाट है आई हैव नो आईडिया ओके लास्ट में टिश्यूज का है भाई मैंने ना एमएन कर दिया मेरे सीधा 463 फॉलोअर्स हो चुके हैं भाई एमएन से हां ना माय I don't want to do this class. Just talk at us. Yeah, okay. You don't understand. My he's actually the guy. And you just got so nice day. As he gets called as well. Share the cameras okay. And he doesn't. I identify as उनकी पड़ोसन. Okay, that is my identity. What's your identity? SCPS के सर की पड़ोसन. और उनको मेरा भी जॉब पता होना चाहिए. उनके इंट्रोडक्शन में ऐड होना चाहिए. ऐसे थोड़ी ना होता है. Legit भाई legit. 16 मिनट का दिया था. ओके हम लोग थोड़ा इनका क्वालिफिकेशन कॉलेज में कैसे करते थे ये कैसे पास हो नहीं अच्छा ठीक है इनका खत्म के बेटे का शुरू हो गया बेटी का फिर पत्नी का फिर भाई मेरे बेटे की पत्नी का भी चाहिए हां ठीक है ना थोड़ा मेरा लिखा इंट्रोडक्शन में मैं ऑफेंडेड हूं I was having a slide heading and he did not even add my name. That is just offensive. मैं पता है 3 दिन से एमएन की स्टोरी डाली क्योंकि हर कोई एक दिन पे एक दूसरे दिन पे उनको टैग करके स्टोरी डाली तो सबको रिपोस्ट करना पड़ जाएगा भाई मैंने देखा सारा भाई बायो किचन डिस्कस डिबेट कंपटीशन था मेरे को यूएसए की तरफ से वुमेन इन डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट पे डिबेट करना था किस तरह से यूएसए मेरे को सब लोग अबॉर्शन नहीं करते थे हमने व्हाट प्लेस गोल्ड क्लिफ वाशी 2 days I spent there. इसको देखकर लगता है कर क्या रही हूँ मतलब मैं घर पे घुस जाए मैं बैठ के टीवी देखते इतने मैगी खा रही सीरियसली मैं क्या ही कर मैं सुबह से 8 बजे गई आके 8 बजे घर आई this girl ना she's like if you look at her उसने बीच में हमने कर क्या रही हूँ मैं घर उसके बीच में हमने लाइक क्लबिंग सीन भी कर दिया लाइक उनके ऑडिटोरियम में शादी वाले अलाउ करते हैं तो हमने उन्हीं का ऑडिटोरियम बुक करके उधर ही क्लबिंग सीन कर दिया सोशल जीत रहा है यार अच्छा कैसे हो जाता है यार मैं मेरा साइन लिखा बच्चों जैसा साइन है और मैं जैसे अरे वो सिद्धि का साइन देखा भाई सुनो मैं बताती हूँ देखो पता ही नहीं था मेरी मम्मी का साइन क्या है और मेरे और मेरी मम्मी के इनिशियल सेम है तो हमारा साइन भी सेम क्या मतलब है It's Vibha Rai and this is our sign. Hi, my sign changes every phase. See, look, the variation. संजीती, देखा इतनी सी
फॉर्म्स कलेक्टिव साइन, बट वो अभी ना उन्होंने बैंक स्टेटमेंट में साइन चेंज कर दी क्योंकि हमारा सेम था।
सिद्धि का साइन
कैसा है?
Oh my God.
सारंगी वो पाकिस्तान
Really?
क्या होता है?
अच्छा नाम है सारंगी ओप्पा। Did you just read? इसका नाम
ये नहीं जो वो डिटेल्स
हम स्कूल के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं।
देखो क्या आउट है चुगली तो कर
तो नॉर्मल बात करो उससे।
ठीक है क्या
4 दिन बात कर रहे हैं। वो बंदा अपने ड्रामा में, मैं अपने ड्रामा में हूँ।
सभी कटना
कभी 4 घंटे में तुम लोग को 7 मैसेज धकेल देती।
चल मैं बैंगलोर थोड़े टाइम के लिए फैमिली लोग लगे बस प्राइवेट मैं शिफ्ट कर रही हूँ ठीक है ना उसके छोटे भाई पर कितना है वो 5 ओके आई शो यू हाउ क्यूटली अनोइंग ही इज मैं जैके पिक्चर देखती ही नहीं हूँ मैं बस खाली उसके भाई
Pretty
I'll show you Oh my God सिद्धि साइन कर जरा साइन कर एक बार सिद्धि का साइन कर अब भी कर
सिद्धि का साइन वाला awesome.
No, they all are just so jealous of your
God.
sign. Wait, I'll show you this.
And you were doing
How old is this
place right
now?
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, look at here. Look at that. Sign करना.
That was jealous of that.
Sign वाला sign. Shut up. Stop complaining.
जैसे का मेरे ये बड़ा आगे कैसे देगा?
नहीं, honestly छोटे बच्चे. वो जय को मार रहा था और जय रिकॉर्ड कर रहा था वीडियो लाइक रेस्टोरेंट के मेन्यू उठा के जय को मार रहे थे एक थप्पड़ मार देती थी अरे नहीं उसने एक बार मारा था मेरे को वीडियो भेज दिया था उसके बाद मैं हाँ बच्चों को थोड़ा ना मारता है
मैं मारती ना भाई देखो पता नहीं कितना बनेगा साइन करना जल्दी सिद्धि अरे एक मिनट इसका साइन मतलब
ये वेयर इज द क्लासिकल डांसर क्या नाम था उसका सांसें लंबी लंबी सांसें ले मैं
भाई आदित्य कोई बात करेगा अरे मेरा दिमाग का छूट गया था सिद्धि डॉगी से क्या था मेरी क्लास में हाँ शायद मैंने ही किया था मेरा दिमाग का छूट गया
मैं नीचे जो टॉप करने का उतने में खुश हो जाओ
पता नहीं क्यों मेरे क्लास में किसी के पूरे हफ्ते ओह गॉड इसी क्लास में हाँ क्लासमेट है वो तो स्कूल कैसे जा पाती है
तू क्या करती है स्कूल में क्या करती है
अरे वो टूट गया तेरा एग्जाम में चल रहा तेरा एग्जाम था हमारा स्कूल का छुट्टी कभी नहीं मिलते थे वहां पे अबे हो गई ना पागल मंडे को हुई ना मैंने एक हफ्ते एग्जाम के समय में मैंने एक हफ्ते एग्जाम के बाद कौन सा एग्जाम सारे कोई भी एग्जाम अच्छा गया हिंदी होगा मैंने मैथ्स होगा एसएसटी अच्छा गया मुझे मराठी में पूरी इंग्लिश होगा भाई मेरा एसएसटी बहुत अच्छा गया मेरा सिर्फ एसएसटी में बहुत अच्छा गया मेरा जब पेपर डिस्कस किया नहीं मुझे नहीं लगा हिंदी भाई ना बोली लड़कियों को ना सबको इंडिविजुअल टेस्ट बुलाकर मैं बात कर रही हूं नहीं लड़के की तो हमेशा ही गंदे मार्क्स आते हैं
हिंदी का क्लास भाई मेरा अभी मंडे से एग्जाम
अरे प्रतिभा मैम को
अरे नहीं आई थी हम लोग तो शुरू में यही होपफुली आ जाओ
Good evening.
Exactly same.
So improvement in food resources we were studying. So we had already discussed about what the last day we were discussing about improvement in yield. We had stopped with that. And improvement in variety we were talking about. Improvement in variety we were talking about conditions necessary for high yield. Turn to that chapter, page number 141. We are on that page now. So the other day I had explained you about a basic difference between hybridization and genetic modification. Hybridization and genetic modification, which can give rise to two different types of crops. What was the basic difference we had learned? In hybridization, what is done?
We take basically pollinate.
What is done in
take the pollen
hybridization?
from one plant and put it into the main reproductive part of the other.
What is hybridization?
Getting two good qualities of plants and making.
What is hybridization? Think first what you are speaking. What is hybridization? Getting an improved. You are not absent.
I was absent.
You were absent. You were there, no?
I was absent.
So what is hybridization? Getting an improved variety of a crop by using tissues of two different varieties. When you are asked what is hybridization, that time you are not going to write down the pollen from here jumping there. No, that you are not supposed. That is what I explained it to make things simpler. Yes, by the process of pollination, etc., etc. But what is hybridization? What are you supposed to write down? The tissues of two different plants, the stem part or the bud part or the leaf part. There are certain plants which grow by stem, which grow by buds, roots. So now, if I talk about hybridization, I may talk about the root of one and take the stem of another and merge them. Hybridization. I may talk about the embryo of one type of a plant, and then in this embryo or this particular embryo allowed to grow for some time, and then take the bud of another plant and try the process of pollination between them. So the two types of flowers are allowed to pollinate, two different plants, two flowers of two different plants allowed to pollinate. So if we are taking the tissues of two different plants, trying the process of pollination or just grafting, that is also called grafting, not necessarily always pollination, grafting of two different tissues, two different plants, and then get one particular plant, improved variety. If that is what we are doing, that is hybridization. Then how was genetic modification different from hybridization? In case of genetic modification, changes are done at the DNA. So for that, specifically the cells of the embryo has to be studied. The genes and the DNA has to be studied. And we have to find out that which are some of the genes which are responsible for the faulty characteristics in that plant that we want to change. Say suppose we talk about one particular variety of mango. Now that it is the mango season, you also have been coming across so many varieties. Now that we talk about one variety of mango, I say there is one particular variety of mango which gets easily affected by the rains. Now that it is raining, there will be certain varieties of mangoes which are still resistant. And there will be certain varieties of mango, certain varieties of rice, certain varieties of paddy, all dying out. So for a farmer, these type of crops which easily get affected by environmental factors are not a good variety. And the plant types which are resistant to these environmental factors, not easily affected by the environment change, are a good variety. So the farmer and the breeder would always try to grow such type of plants which are resistant, not only to water, rain, but also resistant to the soil salinity, meaning the salt concentration in the soil. That is one. The amount of
How
the
does the salt concentration change? Isn't it just
irrigation, by irrigation, and that also irrigation by the marine water or excessive rainfall. So there are certain reasons. So when I talk about that, the salinity of the soil has increased, so many plants will die out immediately within a period of a week. But there will be certain plants which will remain unaffected almost for a long period. So these are the good varieties, resistant varieties. So for a breeder, for a farmer, for a breeder, it is always, they would always try to look for a resistant variety. They always go for a resistant variety. So now that we are talking about the resistant varieties, is it only for the mango that I am speaking? No, it is applicable for any crop, the wheat and the paddy and the pulses and the gram and the beans. Any example to talk about, they all are resistant varieties that will be grown, that are commercially important. So for hybridization, what is done? Now that I say one particular plant is so much affected by the water, little bit of rain is dying out. Certain type of plants are so much affected by insects or pests in the soil. Easily the roots get damaged, the stem gets damaged, the leaves get damaged. But there will be so many varieties of plants where the leaves and the roots and the stem are already releasing certain special chemical substances that when the pathogens try to grow on them, bacteria try to grow on them, they cannot because of the presence of those additional chemical substances. So a breeder would always love to grow those type of varieties where the plant can protect itself, the plants are resistant to pests. So likewise, this ability of a plant to give rise to those special chemical substances to protect itself is there in the genes. Some plants have it, some plants don't have it. So the other day what I explained you, I talk about one variety of plant which has the gene to produce special chemicals and protect from pathogens. Another variety does not have that gene, and that's why it is easily affected by pathogens. So what would a breeder try to do? Separate the embryonic cells from variety 1 because it has the faulty gene. So take the embryonic cells, study the DNA, delete here means remove the faulty gene with the help of some enzymes. That's a tedious process. So remove that faulty gene. But in that place, another gene should be there because the DNA segment becomes discontinuous. Now, another type of a DNA has to be added from the good variety, the gene which is capable of producing the chemical substances to make the plant resistant. So if these are the changes done at the level of the chromosomes and the DNA and the genes to make a variety of a plant a better variety, an improved variety, which is a more lengthier and a more tedious and a more difficult process, this is what we are talking about as genetic modification. But what is common in both the methods, hybridization and genetic modification, we are getting improved variety. Whatever the method, easier or difficult, ultimately what are we getting? We are getting improved varieties of plants. The other day we stopped with this, factors for which variety improvement is done. Now what are the factors for which the variety improvement will be done? What are the factors for which the variety improvement will be done? What are the factors for which the variety improvement will be done? What is the heading saying? What is the head saying there? The head says, the head says that what would be, the head says, read the head, factors for which variety improvement is done, meaning for what good reason the variety improvement should be done. What are the methods? Hybridization and genetic modification. Then why it should be done? It should be done for the first point. Why it should be done? Number one is yield. If we are able to develop a good plant, the good plant produces good quality seeds. If the seeds are good, if the seeds themselves are good, then the plant, the new upcoming plant will, as it is, we have better varieties, not so. But we are planting some not very good quality of seeds. I have got some cheaper quality of some gram seeds. I have got some cheaper quality of some lentils. I have got some cheaper quality of some rice grain. But now I'm giving these type of seeds and telling the farmer that I want from these seeds the best variety of the crops and I want to sell them in the market and should be of great commercial demand. Is that possible? If I have to understand that to obtain a great yield, commercial importance, the plants, the crop, the moment I take them in the market, they should be easily of great demand and sold out easily. That means obviously the crops and the seeds and the grains and the fruits has to be of good quality. And to have such quality, first of all, the seeds have to be of a very good quality. So the first point is yield. Improved quality, the same thing that I spoke just now. Tick number 3, biotic and abiotic resistance. This, which I have been talking repeatedly about. Biotic resistance. A plant is known to have biotic resistance. What is the meaning of that? A plant when it is resistant to pathogens in the soil. Biotic. What is the meaning of resistance? Resistance, you understand, no? To resist. To be able to resist, not become easily sensitive. So I talk about a plant is, plants are basically known to be resistant or sensitive to various factors. Sunlight, too much of sunlight, yes, plants may die. Too much of rainfall, then also plants may die. Too much of humidity, plants may die. Certain type of temperature change suddenly. We come across suddenly now, say suppose in the months of May, in the hot months of May, if suddenly there is rainfall, is it good for the plant? No, it is not good for the plant. The temperature should fall gradually. I talk about now that it is raining, suddenly if tomorrow it is bright sunny and again temperature is 32 and 33 and if it happens for another 2-3 days consecutively, yes, we all will start falling sick again. The temperature rise and the temperature fall both should be gradual, not abrupt. If the temperature rise and temperature fall, if it is abrupt and if we are affected, obviously plants are also affected. No? So what is the meaning of biotic resistance and abiotic resistance? When these temperature and rainfall and etc., when they are showing a sharp change, do plants remain affected? Most of them. Like see for us also, those of us who have got good immunity, with the change in the weather and etc., we don't remain that much affected. But you also must have come across in your school, in your class, the moment there is change in the weather season, so many children, they remain absent, no? They remain absent for school, but some of you must not be going, some of you must not be absent in the school even for a day. So what is the reason? If you have got good immunity, you are not easily affected. And if you are not having good immunity, then every time with the season change, a little bit of higher temperature, higher rainfall, humidity, we easily get affected. Cough, cold, fever, etc. happening all throughout. So same for a plant. A plant may be resistant, certain varieties are not resistant. So the breeder would prefer what type of a variety? Obviously the resistant variety. That will give you more economy, more yields, more economy. So resistant to temperature and rainfall and moisture and salinity, this would be considered as abiotic. No, these are non-living factors. Abiotic. And resistant to pathogens and pests and germs and viruses and not a problem. So when we are talking about this resistant to biological organisms, resistant to living organisms, why do you prefer to sit at the last bench every time? So that you can back rest. No, you can back rest. Elderly people, all old age people sitting here, see it, all back resting. No? So now when we are talking about abiotic resistance, understand? Biotic resistance means give certain examples of biotic resistance of a plant. What examples are you supposed to write? Plants can be resistant to bacteria, nematodes, worms, germs, viruses, etc. Pathogens. Because when I talk about how can a plant be affected by biotic agents, by all these different type of germs and pathogens, there are certain type of plants which will not be that much affected. I already gave you one example. Certain plants are not easily affected by the pathogens in the soil and the germs. Now that it is moisture, that it is so much of humidity around. There will be certain plants which are easily affected by the moisture and they develop fungus and the plants die out. But still there will be certain varieties, nothing will happen to them till the month of September, October, even though there is enough moisture. So these are the resistant varieties.
So they come in bio.
Now it is abiotic. Abiotic. So now that I talk about the moisture is the abiotic factor. And the growth of the fungus on them, that becomes the biotic factor. So I talk about that certain plants like the hibiscus and etc. They are easily affected by the fungal growth on them. So can I say that the fungus is acting as a biotic agent and destroying the plants? Yes, hibiscus is resistant to fungal growth. But there are, like again, the marigold and all, resistant to fungal growth. But there are so many plants which are not that much resistant, sensitive to fungal growth. So we talk about the second point, third point. Tick that again. I ask you to tick that because you get questions on this. Biotic and abiotic resistance means what? What does they refer to? Change in the maturity duration. Now, what are we reading here? What are these points relating to? Why would a breeder try to improve the quality? The breeder would also try to improve the maturation period. The maturity duration. For example, I talk about one variety of a plant. This is one variety of a plant, and this plant matures. Matures means what? It undergoes the process of fruiting and flowering. A particular variety of plant is there, and this plant takes almost about 10 months for the process of flowering, maturity. What about the other plant? In this other plant, we come across, yes, never mind the flower quality and the seed qualities, everything is good. But then this plant takes almost about 14 months for the process of growth of the flower and the fruit later. But this has 14 months of maturity and the seed quality, pollen quality, etc. are nothing very great. But this seed quality, pollen quality are also almost the same like this. But it takes a shorter period of time for fruiting and flowering and germination. So as I mentioned, that the quality of the seed and the fruit are almost the same. Little bit of difference perhaps. Then which type of a plant will be picked up by the breeder to grow more and more? Obviously this one, because this is giving large number of seeds and pollen in just 10 months. The breeder can complete in 1.5 years almost about complete one cycle of plants he can get in adequate amount, and here by the next year almost another half cycle of maturity done. And here almost in 1 year the breeder is not able to produce anything. 1 year gone, the breeder does not produce any fruit, any flower. So change in the maturity period, change in the maturity duration. So when we are talking about change in the maturity duration, meaning how long would a particular flower take to develop? Is it there in the genes of the plant? In how much time the flower will give rise to a fruit and the seed and the flower? Is it already there in the genes of the plant cells? Yes. It is already there in the genes of the plant cells. For example, for us also, how tall are we going to grow and how intelligent are we going to grow and etc. etc. Is it already there in the genes of our cells, or we can develop to any extent we want to? No, never. Same like that. How much or how long would the plant give in how many months? In 6 months or 8 months or 12 months, the plant will give rise to the flowers and the seeds. It's already there in the seed. It is already there in the genes of that plant cells. So can that be changed a little bit? Yes, it can be. The genes can be manipulated. And what is that method called when the genes are manipulated? Genetic modification. So when the genes are manipulated, a method known as genetic modification, yes. So here, if this plant is already having so many good characteristics, then by genetic modification, the maturity period can be decreased. And if this plant already has a shorter maturity and already so much of good characteristics, then no need of maturity or no need of genetic manipulation, and this plant will be picked up majorly by the breeders. So which point are we talking about? Change in the maturity duration. Next is water adaptability. What is the meaning of adaptation? You know what is the meaning of adaptation?
Change oneself to the environment.
Ability to
Change oneself
according to the environment change. Yeah. So do we keep on adapting ourselves to the changing environment? Yes. All animals does. So at the same time, if the plants, now quite a number of plants are able to do that. Now see, even in human also, now some people are so adamant, no, in terms of their behavior, and if they don't want to change at all. So we are constantly changing with the people around us. We are constantly changing with the changing environment around us, etc., etc. But as even in human, we come across some people are very stiff and very adamant about their lifestyle or etc., etc. Same are plants. Certain plants, they cannot adjust with the changing environment. So that is again in their genes. Certain plants cannot adjust with the changing environment, and that's the reason in adverse conditions they die out. They dry out. They dry out. So if these plants are some of those which are really of good economic importance, then breeders would always try to bring about some change, right? See there one example is mentioned there. One variety can then be grown under different climatic conditions in different areas. So when we are talking about wider adaptability, what is the meaning of wider adaptability here? A particular plant can adjust only with the changes in temperature, but not with the change in humidity and salinity. And another plant can change very much with changes in water content also, moisture also, and salinity also, more or less.
What is that?
Salinity means amount of soil in the water, amount of salt in the soil water, amount of salt, how saline the soil water is. If the soil water is too saline, plant roots would start dying out, rotting down, decomposition. The roots will not remain functional, they start getting rotted. So salt in the water, salt in the soil water should be comparatively lesser. So wider adaptability means if a plant is able to adapt with 3-4 environmental factors, that is always a good plant, good variety. A plant is able to adapt only with 1 or at the most 2 factors, not a very good variety. That is what is considered. Take the last point, that is very important. Desirable agronomic characteristics. Desirable agronomic characteristics. Now, did we ever come across the pea plants and the cucumber and the pumpkin plants being very stiff and long and broad and huge plants? Are these huge plants? The pumpkin and the pea and the cucumber, what type of plants are these?
These are
Creepers, no? Climbers, creepers. And why? Because these type of plants need to be short. They should be short, but at the same time, they should be a little bit branching. And if I talk about the pumpkin, the fruit, most of the energy or the nutrients should go in the formation of the fruit. Talk about the pea, these type of plants are creepers, and too much of the energy and the nutrients should not be used in the formation of the leaves and the stem and the roots, but rather make numerous nutritive seeds. So agronomic characteristics means what? We always come across a certain type of plants have got special characteristics, either the branching pattern, or they have got parallel roots on the stem, or they have got thinner, weaker stems and take the support of other plants, and still they give rise to nutritive and adequate, well-sized fruits, etc. Why? Because though these plants are not having good, well-developed roots and stem, should the flowers and the nutrients be a waste? No, they are still able to give rise to productive products they are able to give rise to. Agronomic characters, you'll have to underline some of these, which are you are supposed to cite those examples when you write down the answer. Tallness and profuse branching are desirable characters for the fodder crops. What is the other term for fodder crops? The other day we discussed. Fodder crops are also known as leguminous. Remember we talked about leguminous crops. What was one special feature of the leguminous?
They have the
Nitrogen. They have got specialized root nodules, and they can fix atmospheric nitrogen and convert them into
usable forms of
nitrogen. What was that usable form I mentioned? Nitrates. Nitrate. NO3 nitrates. And the plants can only utilize or absorb nitrogen in the form of nitrates, which remains dissolved in the water. So what is the first example I asked you to underline? Tallness and profuse branching is a suitable characteristic for the leguminous plants. Some examples of leguminous plants would be the pea and the bean and the gram, etc. And see the second one, dwarfness for cereals. Can you give me 5 examples of cereals? 5 examples of cereals. Pulses. Millets. Grams. These are true seeds. Cereals, when I talk about, yes, cereals would be oats, and then we talk about the millets, and then we talk about the ragi, and then we talk about the wheat, and then we talk about the different type of lentils. All this would come under this category of cereals. Now the cereal plants, these type of plants, I think we have never come across.
As corn a cereal?
Corn is a grain. It's a proper grain, like the rice grain. So when we are talking about these different examples, now did we ever see that these cereals, say suppose a different type of lentils and all these, are the plants huge, big, tall and strong plants? No, these are not all strong, these are majorly all shrubs. Majorly all shrubs. Why? Though they are shrubs, the energy should not be spent in the formation of the thick, big trunk and the stem. Better, thinner stem, branching pattern, so that the grains and the cereal and the grains flowers are too many that they can produce, even if the plant is small and short. Dwarfness, underline. Dwarfness is a major agronomic character. But just imagine we talk about a particular type of cereal which is comparatively taller. The stem is thick, broad, the plant is tall. The plant, will that be able to produce large number of cereal, large number of flowers to produce large number of cereal? Probably not, because most of the energy is used in the formation of the stem and the root. So that plant is not a viable plant. That is not a viable plant. So 2 characteristics here we are discussing, tallness and the dwarfness. Come to the next part, crop production. So we have been talking about the first point, that is variety improvement, how to do and why to do. So at the end of the first part of the chapter, what are the 2 major methods for variety improvement you have studied? What are the 2 major methods? Hybridization and genetic modification, with examples in each, you have to remember. The second part to come across is production management. Now this is a major part of the chapter. Dwarfness, I said. If I talk about, underline some examples first of all. Dwarfness, when we talk about dwarfness in cereals. So I told you that cereal plants need to be dwarf. Why? Cereal plants should not be tall. If by chance we come across, even by the process of hybridization, a cereal plant has developed and which is taller, will the breeder develop that type of a plant for generation and generation? No. Because the cereal plants are supposed to have weaker stem, weaker roots, but maybe by hybridization they have developed bit taller. But now that they have developed bit taller, the plant is utilizing, or rather I should say the plant is wasting so much of its nutrients and energy, making the root and the stem more thicker and firm, because the root and the stem being thicker and firm is of no use for that plant. Rather it should be short and be branching and produce a large number of grains. See, when we talk about the cereals, talk about the wheat and the pulses and all these. Is it like the mango? Are the number of the fruits growing in them, or the seeds growing in them like the mango? I talk about a mango plant and I talk about a cereal plant. One particular plant will give rise to hundreds of grains. Whereas one particular mango plant will give rise to hardly at the most 20-25 mangoes, not more than that. So this particular plant has its own specific characteristic, thick, broad stem and roots, etc. The other cereal plants you talk about, the fodder crops you talk about, they need not be unnecessarily tall because the grain size is small, better produce large number of those grains and seeds. So the energy and the nutrient should not be wasted in making the root and stem elaborate. Production. Now let us go to the next part. Production management. Look into that. First of all, the nutrient management. Nutrient management. Now when we talk about the nutrient management, underline there, every plant requires almost about 16 different types of nutrients. Plant requires 16 different types of nutrients. And what are these nutrients categorized as? They are categorized as macronutrients, which a plant would require in large amount, and some are considered as micronutrients, which a plant would require in small amounts. Same like our body. When we talk about the vitamins and the minerals, we understand that the vitamins and minerals, of course, we require in small amounts. But if this small amount of vitamins and minerals are not there in our body, is it that it doesn't matter? Our health and our functions in our body, will that be still very normal and very healthy? No. A particular mineral we may come across which is present just in 0.25 grams. But even then, if that 0.25 grams is not there in our body consecutively for a period of some months, we will start suffering from some of the other problems in our body. Same like that. When we talk about the nutrients that the plant requires, what are these nutrients? What are the two categories? Macro and micro. Some of them are required in large amounts. You'll have to remember those examples there. Which are the macronutrients? Macronutrients are basically the sodium and the potassium and the calcium and the magnesium. All these are the macronutrients. These are necessary. These are needed by a plant in large quantities. Which are the micronutrients there? The zinc and then molybdenum and then iron. And then we talk about iodine. All these are required in trace amounts. Now, does that mean that if the iodine is not there, iron is not there, the plant will not suffer from anything? No, they will still suffer from certain conditions like the yellowing of the leaves and delayed germination and the shedding of the leaves very fast, and all these different conditions happen in the plant. Tick there. What are some of the macro and the micronutrient? Can you see there? The last paragraph there for soil, it is written. Macronutrients, which are the ones, which are some of the examples, and micronutrients, which are some of the examples. And apart from that, when we are talking about, apart from this macro and micronutrients, what are the other nutrients that the plant would always require? Carbon dioxide, water, oxygen. These are also primary for a plant. Carbon dioxide, you already know that the plant requires carbon dioxide, water majorly for photosynthesis, and it requires oxygen for, plant requires oxygen for respiration. Plants also show respiration. Classification of nutrients. You'll have to just remember those examples here. Macronutrients and the definition. Here from this part, you straight away get 2 more questions. Differentiate between macro and micronutrient with examples in each case. So here the examples of the macro and the examples of the micro. You have to remember many examples are given there. We now talk about the deficiency of nutrients. What would happen because of the deficiency of the nutrients? Same like our body, when we understand that if we don't have deficiency of these minerals and vitamins, say suppose we don't have the deficiency, we have a deficiency of iron in our body. Iron is supposed to be present in our body in very small amounts, but even if we don't have iron, our blood has a deficiency of iron now for almost about 6 months, 8 months in our body, almost a year, then are we still going to run healthy and functional? Is it that it doesn't matter whether iron is there in adequate amount or not? No, the person will start suffering from anemia. The person will start suffering from anemia followed by too much of tiredness, etc., etc. So like this, there are so many examples to talk about. If there's a deficiency of calcium, magnesium, phosphorus in our body. So if there's a deficiency of calcium and magnesium and phosphorus in our body, then do you know what happens to our body? We start suffering from weakness in our bone, decay in our teeth, etc., etc. So same like that. When we look into the plants also will show some major disturbances if there's a deficiency of any of these minerals. What are some of the disturbances the plant will show? Now, for the plant, what are some of the common disturbances? For a plant, if there is a deficiency of the mineral, don't do that. Your sister was so good. Why are you always lack of concentration in the class? Absolutely different, both of you. So when we are talking about these different characteristics, that when we talk about that, what would happen to a plant which is having some differences in the macro or the micronutrient, what would happen? What are some of the common conditions? Number one, the plant will show delayed germination. You understand what is germination? The growth of a young plant from a seed. Now, it may feel that the seed is there in the soil and the seed is supposed to give rise to a new plant. But sometimes we come across that a mango seed which is supposed to give rise to a new plant in 3 months is not giving rise to a new plant even in 8 months. The seed condition and the availability of the factors not adequate. So when we are talking about that, means obviously the seed must not be having all the different type of macro and micronutrient. That is what is happening the growth and process of germination. I talk about a full developed plant. The plant is growing healthy, but after some time, the plant which is supposed to flourish and give rise to large number of leaves and flowers, suddenly we get to see that the leaves are getting yellow now. Yes, it happens whenever we are growing a plant maybe. And we get to see that yes, by the 4th month and the 5th month, the plant is now supposed to flourish and give rise to leaves and flowers, but then the leaves are yellowing down. Obviously now the plant must be suffering from certain type of deficiencies, macro or micro. So what are some of the most common things that we come across in a plant and understand that the plant must be having some deficiency of nutrients, either yellowing of the leaves or the plant growth not as per, I talk about a mango plant, within some 1 year time, the plant should really grow very tall. The coconut, yes, within 6 to 8 months time, the plant should really start growing. I talk about some of the flowering plants. Within some 2 to 3 months, the process of branching and the coming out of the leaf should happen. So if the process of growth is adequate and germination is adequate, then we understand that the nutrient level is adequate there. Any of these nutrients not there, the plant will be stunted. It will not keep on growing at all, even if you put the manure and etc. Some or the other minerals are deficient. Number 2, process of germination delayed, I already told you. Number 3, what would happen? The leaves would start curling quite a number of times. The leaves which are supposed to grow flat and broad, they start curling. The leaves start falling off, premature falling of the leaves. The flower size may not be that optimum. The size of the rose, which is supposed to be this big, the size is found to be very small. The size of the tomato leaves or the size of any particular type of a leaf which gives rise to a new crop, a fruit, the size of the leaves, size of the flowers may be comparatively smaller. So this is what we understand. You may look into some points there. What are some of the effects which happen due to improper amount of nutrients? What are the 3 points given there? Take those points. Reproduction, growth, and susceptibility to disease. What is the meaning of susceptibility? Proneness. The plants, whenever they have a deficiency of nutrients, they become easily affected by any type of a condition and they start suffering from plant diseases. Take the next part, manure and fertilizers. Now this already we have come across earlier also. How can manure be formed and what can be some major differences between manure and fertilizer? Manure. Now what is manure? How can manure be formed?
It is formed by the decomposition of
Natural components. For example,
plants and or peels of fruits and vegetables.
Can we make manure at home?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. And then what are we supposed to do? How to make manure at home?
We need worms also.
We need from where are we going to get worms?
From the soil. Like we added the
but we would not have worms. We practically
inside the soil.
But if I want to make manure in my own home, how do I go about it?
We need wet soil and all the
say suppose a person has a farmer has a farmland and he wants to make manure of his own. He does not want to buy any manure for his crops. What he should do? What he can do? What he can? No, a farmer, he wants to make manure of his own. He does not want to buy any cow dung. Okay, apart from cow dung, what he can do, the cheapest way, but the very good way.
Household like food.
The farmer will not carry the household load things to the farm. No, farmer, I'm talking about a farmer. What is the easiest way the farmer will go for? All the fallen plant parts, no, the dried out flowers and the leaves and etc. Can be gathered. All the dead parts of the plants can be gathered. And what is to be done? Say suppose in the farmland, dig a small part of the farmland, put all this waste there. Will this waste, all this farm waste, the fallen part of the ripe fruit and the dead parts of the plant, the leaves and the flowers and all this, if you just gather together at one particular region of the farmland, is it going to undergo the process of decomposition? It has to be covered, but it will undergo the process of decomposition. Now, to fasten the process of decomposition, what we can do, add soil a little bit, because we know that the soil has got bacteria. And the better is add soil which has got worms, earthworms preferably, cover them, put the farm waste again, and then. So I said, can we also do something related? Can we also do something similar? Yes, we also can. No, every day this fruit, vegetable peel. Yes, rotten fruits, but not cooked substances generally. Decomposition partly done. So they will also help in the process of decomposition, not a problem. So now this farm waste or the kitchen waste, basically when we talk about the rotten fruits, we talk about the peels, fruits, vegetables, etc., and keep them maybe in one corner with a make a small flat tub that we have, flat tub with a little amount of the soil, and we put them, cover it with soil, cover it with soil. After some 2 months time, and when we mix it properly with the soil surrounding that we have taken in a pot, is that soil fertile? Yes, the soil is naturally fertile. Now, if we try growing some flowers or some small kitchen plants there, they will be growing as it is, so healthy. What is this called? This particular process of making the manure. What is it called? What is it called? You have come across composting. So this particular method of preparing manure is known as composting. But I have another, now I talk about another farmer. Now this farmer does not want to waste these 3 months of time growing or making the manure. This farmer, after the process of harvest, he has cleaned his farm. And in just another 1 month's time, he has sown the seeds for the next season, and he wants to get the maximum yield in another 4 months. So what he has done is, instead of sowing the seed, sowing the land properly, etc., what he has done, he has sown the seeds for the next season and sprayed adequate amount of some chemical substances rich in nitrogen, urea, etc. What are these chemical substances called? Fertilizers. So now that he has used all these chemical substances, this is basically rich in nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. So now that he has sprayed all these and a little bit of irrigation he has taken care of, and in 4 months' time the plants have grown flourishing. The plants have grown flourishing and he got an adequate productivity, adequate yield. And he had been doing this for the last 3-4 years now.
The soil will lose its productivity.
So now on the 5th, 6th year, he gets to see that the productivity is, though he is using the same type of chemical components, now the productivity is not good, not like the first and the second and the third year. So in the 5th year, the productivity has gone down, and the 6th gone down, and the 7th almost less, and the 8th almost less. So what is happening to this soil now?
The soil has lost its fertility and has become porous.
Has become less porous, and how? But why? By adding these chemicals, what he has destroyed. By adding these chemicals in large amounts, of course, you got the productivity, but what got destroyed in the soil? The soil organisms. The soil organisms which naturally would have undergone the process of decomposition or undergone the process of help in the process of growth, etc. All these are gone. So the natural way of gaining fertility of that soil. So the soil is no more able to gain its fertility the natural way. And constantly by using those chemical substances, the organisms are all dead. Now the soil is almost barren. So now when he does the harvest, and even if he sprays so much of fertilizer, nothing comes up. So which is a better way then? Take a longer period of time and use manure, or go for the shorter period of time and use fertilizer?
Manure is a better choice.
Manure is a better choice. What are some of the advantages of using manure? You are always asked in the exam. What are some of the advantages of using the manure? Number one, improves the soil quality, makes the soil more porous and aerated. What is the meaning of aerated? So much of air. Air should go on. Which component of the air we are majorly talking about? Oxygen. And of course nitrogen. Here we are talking about majorly oxygen. Which component of the air should go in? Oxygen. Why? Because the soil has got a large number of bacteria which require oxygen for the process of reproduction and growth and respiration. So now that we are talking about that these different factors, that manure is very much necessary for increasing the water holding capacity. Now that I was talking about barrenness of a soil, how did the soil become barren? Because the soil has become hard, the porosity is gone. Since the porosity is gone, the soil is not able to hold water. And if the soil is not wet, how will it allow the growth of the roots? The roots cannot grow, almost like the sandy soil of the deserts. So now that we are talking about that, what would happen to a soil when too much of manure for a prolonged period of time is used? The soil generally becomes barren for certain conditions. Look into the advantages of manure. Take those points and read for yourself. Advantages of manure. What are the advantages of manure? Read. Any point if it is not clear again, ask. Advantages of manure. Advantages of manure. This. How many points are there? 5 points are there. Read those 5 points properly. No, read for yourself. I'm not asking you. Third point is what? The bulk of organic matter in the manure helps in improving the soil structure. The bulk of organic matter. Organic matter, from where will it come in the soil? The dead parts of the plants and animals. Now in the soil, the organic matter is nothing but the biomolecules which are present in the dead parts of the plant and animal. I talk about a pigeon lying on the soil dead. The body is just rich in organic matter. The biomolecules that we have in our body is all the carbohydrate and the protein and the fat. These are the organic food. I talk about the flower and the fruit and the roots and the stem dying out and on the surface of the soil. Biomolecules rich are what? Organic matter again. So now if you go by the normal method of decomposition, the soil is getting back its organic content. But if you go by the use of fertilizers are they organic or inorganic? Inorganic. Just now I talked about nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. These are the inorganic contents and they would remain in the soil for a short period of time. The third point. Now the fourth point, the first point is that understood? Underline the word humus. Manure adds humus to the soil. And humus improves physical and chemical texture. Humus, what is humus? How do we define humus? Humus is what? You've heard about this word humus? What is it?
The layer of.
I talk about the texture of the soil. The soil has got layers. Where is humus? The bottom layer, the middle layer, the topmost layer. And the topmost layer is always known to be formed by dead and decaying organisms, the decomposing layer. So this layer is always known to be the most fertile layer. The layer which has more of humus is always the most fertile layer. is the most fertile type of soil. The soil which has adequate amount or adequate layer, adequate thickness of the humus is the most fertile soil. Can you give me an example of a type of a soil very fertile? Alluvial soil, followed by the loamy soil. And the type of a soil not fertile?
Clay and sandy soil.
Sandy soil. Clay soil also. Sandy soil.
Too much of water for any.
Too much of water. And the nutrient level is nothing much. The humus, the process of decomposition cannot happen there. So that is the first point. To underline that word, humus, you have to mention those points. Second point is the manure helps in enriching soil with nutrients and organic matter. That is easily understood. Soil fertility. What is meant by soil fertility? Fertility means what? Ability to grow. So I talk about the soil fertility. A soil is known to be fertile when it gives rise to profuse amount of vegetation in a short period of time. Desert soils, they are not fertile. They are known to be barren. Number 3 we discussed. Number 4, this involves increasing the water holding capacity. So we were talking about that if in a particular type of a soil the process of decomposition has happened, the leaching of the nutrients, the entry of the nutrients, etc., the deeper layers of the soil had made the soil porous. And if it is more porous, now that it rains or irrigation happened, the soil will be able to hold in more water. The more it holds water, it remains wet, moist for a longer period of time. So this moistness is helping in two processes. One is the faster growth of the roots and decomposition by bacteria. Bacterial decomposition can happen much faster. Now, if you I talk about a dry area. I maintain a dry area. Say suppose I talk about a piece of bread. I take 2 pieces of bread. One little bit moist I keep, and the other I dry it and toast it and dry it and toast it. And the other piece of the bread I have just kept it moist. Which piece of the bread will undergo the process of decomposition faster?
The moist one.
The moist one, because moisture always helps in the growth of bacteria and decomposition, and also the fungal growth. But the dried surfaces does not favor such type of growth easily. And the last point already we talked about, water logging. Remember, too much of water logging, is it good for the plants? The roots will start getting decomposed.
And there will be no place for the oxygen to be.
The oxygen.
Soil won't be
porous. The pores of the soil are all clogged with the water, and the diffusion of the oxygen cannot happen. Next is we talk about the compost and vermicompost. Compost, did we talk about compost just a while ago? What is composting? Collecting the farm waste, kitchen waste, etc.
Collecting organic waste and allowing
organic waste, farm waste, kitchen waste, and covering with layers of soil and allowing the process of decomposition happen.
What is the difference between manure and compost?
What is the difference between
Manure and compost?
Compost is the partially formed manure, and it is a process going on to form the manure. Manure is the ultimate product that we are talking about. And the compost is partially getting formed. You are covering with layers.
It is the process, right?
It is the process, composting. And what is compost? The partially formed manure. And when it is completely forming that semi-solid mass, and that is what you talk about as the manure. But in this entire process of making the manure from the kitchen waste or the farm waste, roughly something around a year is always required. But I talk about a farmer who is not ready to wait for all these 10, 11 months, 12 months. So what he would do, he would generally allow red worms, earthworms to be there in the process of decomposition, to be there in the process of composting. Then what is this process specifically termed as? Vermicomposting. Then it is called vermicomposting. Check the second point there. Check the second point. The compost is rich in organic matter and nutrients. Compost is also prepared by using earthworms to hasten the process of decomposition of plants and animal refuse, and this is called vermicompost. Green manure. Now when we talk about the green manure, how is green manure formed?
Green plants are
Say suppose I talk about a farmland. There's a farmland. Now in this farmland, the main plants are grown. there are some 3 varieties of plants the farmer is growing. So there's a particular farmland, and in this farmland, a farmer is growing 3 types of plants in groups and patches. But he also gets to see that there are so many unwanted plants growing there. Weeds. There are now. You also must have observed in your own the pots, the flower pots that we have. We talk about the flower pots that we have in our balconies or in our windows. Did you ever observe unwanted plants growing there? So many. So generally we come across that people would generally plant them, throw them. Plant them and throw them. Yes, that is also one method of saving the primary crops, the primary plant. That is also one way to save the primary plants. But why should we uproot them and throw them? Because they are taking away the nutrients from the soil.
They are
competing with the main plant. They are competing with the main plants that are all been taken away by this, so the main plant is getting much lesser. So we don't want that. But what would be a better idea? No, what would be a better idea? Don't just uproot and throw them. Rather, no, uproot, but mix them with the soil again. Bunch them and constantly keep on. They should be separated and crushed, but not throw away because they are rich in organic matter. Just take them up, uproot them and keep munching and ploughing and munching and constantly mixing them with the soil. And now that they are constantly broken down, they will again not develop into, and this has to be done in short periods of time. So now what's happening? This is what is called green manure. From the waste of the soil, we are making the soil productive again, fertile again. So what is green manure? Instead of just throwing the weeds away, uproot and mix with the soil itself by constantly ploughing them, so that you are constantly supposed to mix them and plough them. And now if you are doing this, what is happening? So much of this organic matter, because the plants are always a source of food, so now the soil becomes even more productive. Fertilizers, we had already been talking about some of the points you underline. Fertilizer source, underline that. Underline source of the fertilizers. Underline source. Fertilizers are majorly rich in what? Fertilizers are majorly rich in NPK. Majorly rich in this 3. So if a particular, I talk about a farmland. Now in this farmland, there are so many varieties of plants growing season by season. But the farmer had been constantly growing by the way of fertilizer. So these plants, whether I talk about the mangoes or I talk about the other fruits or I talk about the crops, will they have other type of nutrients what are supposed to be there? No, this plant which are grown by using fertilizers will only have nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium in large amount. But the other nutrients like the zinc and the iron and the molybdenum, which is also supposed to be there, will be negligible in this type of plants. We'll continue again the next class. This chapter is it started in your school?
No.
Which chapter going on now?
First chapter.
First chapter only. Ryan?
Our exams are coming up, so we only did it.
Exam? When?
It is from Monday.
All of you, Ryan.
No.
She is Podar.
Ryan
You also
and
Podar.
Adnan are from Ryan.
You?
Adnan, we are from Ryan.
You both are Ryan. Orchids.
Jaipur.
Acha. For your exams?
My exams are done.
Exams are done. Chapter was only cell.
Yeah.
We had cell for exam, but
Cell entire chapter was there. Cell entire
The
chapter.
entire chapter wasn't there. We haven't yet completed
How did you do?
half the chapter again.
How did you do? Papers, you got your papers?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got
How did you do?
this.
Not good?
Not really.
Not really good. And what about the others? Ryan, when was your exam?
It is
Going to start.
Going to start. When?
First of
First of August.
Portion?
Portion is just one chapter.
One chapter.
Full set.
Yeah.
Yes.
Full set.
Yes.
Okay.
It's pretty
Great.
less
That's pretty.
for us.
Yeah, obviously. Half of the chapter on tissues also they should have taken.
तो अभी वो सही है पेपर में वो लास्ट पार्ट में ओमिट कर दिया था भाई आईडी कार्ड मत से रखना, लास्ट टाइम में उधर डार्क रहती है।
अरे मतलब कैसे बोलती है ना भाई, आई एम इम्प्रेस्ड।
थोड़ी बहुत ऐसे कंपेयर नहीं करना।
मेरे को है पूरा साइड पर इसलिए मैं पीछे पीछे बैठती हूँ।
इतने बड़े बड़े का सब
सारी लोग क्या करती है, मैं जो एग्जाम देते हैं शाम को बोल देती हूँ वो टीचर इम्प्रेस्ड।
अरे इसका टीचर की बात समझ आ रहा है, जैसे कर रहा हूँ चल नहीं कर रहे।
मेरे मैं उसको ऐसे देख रही थी लाइक अरे कंटिन्यूअस कह रहे थे मम्मी पापा को पीटीएम जो होता है ना
ये पीटीएम भी होता है।
आपको तो आइडिया नहीं है। स्टार्टिंग उसका मैं आई नहीं ना बोली ऐसे करके छोड़ दी। बिल्कुल नहीं पसंद, मेरे पापा को स्पेशली इतना पसंद है कि काम से काम रखो, इसकी तरह चिपचिप मत करो।
ये स्कूल
है ना, सबसे बोलता है कभी कि नो आई शुड लेन आई लिव इन द वो ये मेरे साथ में पूछा था पापा ने भी कही ऑनलाइन
इसलिए ना उस दिन बोला मुझे रे दीपिका है, ये दीपिका हाँ निशिका भी नहीं है। अच्छा शी इज सिस्टर, अच्छा नेक्स्ट टाइम शी कम अल आस्क तुम मुझे एब्सेंट नहीं रहा।
Thank God he didn't ask, he never liked my sister.
Why?